Oh God, it's a huge hesitancy, and it happens a lot. Like, I think this is one of the hardest to own of all 27 subtypes. Because nobody wants to be like a baby. No one wants to be someone who's described as throwing a tantrum or being childlike. I mean, I have to say, I was the same way. The first time I heard Claudio Naranjo say that the self-preservation 2 is childlike, in my mind, I crossed that one off the list. That's not me. I'm not childlike. It took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do as a grown-up, to find a career. I was in school for a really long time because I didn't know. It took me a long time to get to what I wanted to do. It took me an even longer time to be self-sufficient financially. My parents were helping me well into my 30s and even in the beginning of my 40s. And that's humiliating to say, but I had to look at the truth of that and go, wait a minute, I'm still asking mom for money. I mean, that's crazy to think that I'm not childlike.
Welcome to the Story Enneagram Podcast. I'm Jim Gum, and I'm an Enneagram teacher and coach living in Kansas City. Today, we're going to hear from some self-preservation 2s as part of this season's series on the self-preservation subtypes. The Enneagram self-preservation 2 is called privilege, or me first. They're kind, caring, and empathetic. They make connections with people in their circle by leading with their heart. Pride is the passion of the Enneagram Type 2s. However, this subtype is a countertype. Pride is more masked, hidden, and harder to acknowledge. It does show up in the way they would like others to treat them. How do you feel when all of your best intentions and efforts on others' behalf are not well received? Today, we're going to listen to stories from self-preservation 2s to understand their motivations for helping and getting what they need in life. As you heard B share in the opening, owning the self-preservation 2 can be hard because no one wants to be considered childish. And even though the 2 is most typically called the helper or the giver, as a countertype, their actions may look different than the typical 2. Listen to how Kim describes her experience.
I don't completely 100% resonate with the other, like a traditional helper, as in like I'm not throwing myself out there and signing up for everything, volunteering for all the things. And yet I am somebody that is quick to jump in, do dishes, to say, yes, come stay at my place or come and join us for dinner. And yet that's usually on my terms. It feels like it's a lot of times when it works out for me or when there's going to be a benefit from it, or if I don't fit the traditional box of the helper in overdoing. And so I think with the self-pres, I do have boundaries, and I think I'm pretty good at kind of finding what my boundary is.
And here was B's experience.
And for me, it was getting that, I was more fearful than I thought. I needed more protection than I thought. It described why I was so ambivalent about, say, meeting people's needs when other 2s say that they like that or that they do it more readily.
Colene, on the other hand, does identify with the more typical 2 experience.
I just have always felt it very fulfilling. I tend to always be in some type of service role or like always saying, yes, I would be more than happy to help you in certain situations or, oh, you want some advice? Yes, I would be happy to sit and listen and give you, some advice because I may or may not have the answers, but I want to listen and I want to just, whatever that person needs at that time, that's what I want to be because that makes me feel good about being able to be that for them.
The most common question that's asked when I teach is whether a person is born with a certain type or did their circumstances influence their personality. Listen to how the theme of growing up in a broken family played into both Kim and Colene's experience.
So I didn't have a father around at all. And so it was just my mom who was a single parent with 4 girls. So she was trying to manage everything on her own. I never knew which mom I was going to get, the mom that was engaged and invested, or the mom that had to pull away and was absent for a day, days at a time. But the one thing that I kind of figured out early in life is that if I could lessen the stress that she was under in any way, it made a little bit of improvement in the surroundings, the circumstances, my mom's temperament. So as a firstborn, I was managing my younger siblings. I was making sure the house was clean, that I even got a job and started helping pay bills and such, so that the stress was less. The thing that connected me to my mom. So she was able to show some approval of that. And so then I kept doing it. And I think that's where that helper need kind of was solidified early on. Just like, if I keep doing that, she'll be happier, I'll be happier, I'll feel like she loves me.
And here's Colene again.
I love being helpful to people. I feel like that's been instilled in me since, I was a little girl. I really helped with, my parents, especially coming from a broken family, and having a younger brother. I stepped into a lot of positions where, it was just trying to help manage things and keep everything kind of in order. And it just makes you feel good when you see your results of how it makes the person feel by what you're doing.
Self-preservation, too, has a strong desire to be both pleasing and well-liked. Tuning into others and their needs is a way to get those desires met. Listen to how Kim and Colene took on the role of the teacher's pet.
Oh, Miss Hunter, first grade. Yeah, she loved me. She really, all my teachers did. Yes, I do. When you get that instant gratification, you get those gold stars. You get to be the line leader because you are helping them out so often. They're like, you. And I remember her talking about, she would just talk to my mom about how it was the best thing ever. So that fills me up, of course. And especially at that time where I was trying to get the attention of my mom. If I can get the attention of anybody who's giving me gold stars and putting me in front of the line, I'm going to thrive off that.
And here's Colene again.
Especially during my school years, I would definitely say I was teachers' pets. I knew exactly what they wanted, what they needed. I also enjoyed having conversations, and I could, just sit and, listen to them, or different things. A lot of people would probably call me mature for my age at times, just because of just how I would process conversations or those types of things, which teachers love that. And because it makes their job easier, because it's hard enough as it is.
This focus of attention that gets rewarded at a young age translates into adulthood. Here's how B describes her mindset in her current work.
But I do have fear, a kind of fearfulness all the time that manifests more as worrying if things are going to go as planned. Worrying, what if this happens? What if that happens? We need to make sure that, when we're doing a retreat, is everyone going to be happy? Is everyone going to get what they need? What if this happens? What if this person doesn't understand this? What if this person takes this wrong?
Kim relates a story about how this continued into college and her adult life.
In our small group, our facilitator, if you will, is an authoritative, powerful role, if you will. And so I find myself, even in that small group where we're exposing ourselves all the time, where I am trying to assist this facilitator who's not asking for help, mind you, but is just to bring it back when our discussion gets off track, or give the right answer. Yes, I do. I find myself still doing that. And I can pick that person out in the room. And I think there is this sense of, because they seem like they are of power or of authority, then I can if I can win their authority, I can kind of relax. They'll be in charge. They seem like the in charge person. Finding a want or need for that, because that feels like somebody I want to gain their approval, because maybe they can then, maybe it's that take care of me.
B spoke at the beginning about how the self-preservation 2 is the hardest subtype to own because nobody wants to be considered childish. I want to be clear that this type is quite capable and accomplished in many ways. The desire to be taken care of is largely hidden and unconscious. Here's how B describes her experience.
This first realization of realizing I'm not the most powerful one here. I'm the one who actually is unconsciously asking for protection or needing protection. And some of those things that we think of generically as self-preservation stuff, like knowing how much money you have in your bank account, and that what we have to realize when we're dealing with subtypes is it doesn't mean self-preservation does not mean self-care. Sometimes it means the opposite. Right. And in self-preservation too, what it means is you're unconsciously not taking care of yourself to leave space for somebody else to come and do it, because that's the unconscious wish, right? The unconscious wish is that you're going to take care of me.
And here's Kim describing how her self-preservation informs the limitations of her helping after returning home from a trip.
Yeah, even just coming back home from this trip. So we just got back from Florida a couple of days ago. The planner and the doer of the family, I tend to be the one that gets it all done, sees it through, takes care of the details. And then got home, and then there's still so much to do. There's all the things to unpack and get back to work. And so I jumped in, I did all the things, and I can get to a point where I just almost do. So then I cannot do. So almost like give myself that privilege to be off, like work really hard and then be able to justify like, okay, I am completely spent. And it was 7:30 at night and I was done and I was ready to go to bed. And I just said, you got it from here, babe.
The interesting paradox of the self-preservation too is taking care of others while also wanting to be taken care of. Here's Kim again.
It's something that has come up in my marriage, which has been really interesting, is the need for wanting him to be the leader and kind of manage and care for and provide. And what's really funny is when I brought that up with Matt before, he's like, I don't think that's really what you want. That's not anything that you're showing here. And it's so true because my outward actions are like, I need to take care of this. I need to do it. I am independent and I don't want to be dependent. But in reality, I really, really have a desperate need for wanting to feel secure with authority. And I've just never had that. I was basically taking care of my littlest sibling when I was 12 and didn't really have, without having a dad, without having a mom who had the capacity to care for me, kind of just didn't have that authority figure in my life to let me be a child.
The self-preservation too moves against the passion of pride. The pride is more inward and less openly expressed. Colene expresses pride in the confidence of what she's able to offer.
I think I have pride in the work that I do, in the way that I serve others, and the way I'm able to relate and listen to others. You can easily just feel like I'm your go-to. I'm your person. And even though what we state is like we're very humble. I mean, like and I know I don't have it all together, but I do know that I would be a great person for you to, if there's something that you need or that you want, Colene's my go-to person. Like I know that she will drop everything and she will be there. And that can very easily get into pride, which gets me in trouble because when you have a lot of people thinking that, and let's say they're all needing something at the exact same time, you dry yourself out because you're trying to meet all these people's needs and you don't have the energy to do that.
And here's how Kim describes her experience with pride.
We are pretty good at disguising it, although maybe not, because early on in my relationship with Matt, the first book he got for me, but it's a book. The title is Humility. I think he was trying to get a point across. But I read that and it actually really resonated. But I think a lot of twos, I know I can relate to this, is that we have this false sense of humility. So it's well masked by our pride. It is always underlying. And so mine is, for sure, I think that it can be a me first and I deserve and I'm doing to get.
B shares that pride is tricky. What's the difference between feeling good about yourself and getting puffed up? Listen to her experience.
And then just things like, for instance, becoming a leader, doing group facilitation training, which I think was leaning more on my social, my second instinct, and developing that more. I think that helped. And then still a work in progress, sort of owning my power as a thought leader in the Enneagram or as an author, and recognizing I have something to say, recognizing that when I work with people, I help them. Now, the tricky part for me is I have big time fear of pride. So it's a hard thing to discern. When am I stepping into my power and owning my strengths and being more confident as an adult versus when am I getting taken away by pride in a way that's just my ego taking me over? I think it remains to be a challenge for me, really. Feedback from friends helps. Asking like, does this feel like I'm getting grandiose, or does this feel like just something I need to own and feel good about?
One of the consequences of keenly focusing on others' needs is that the two can lose touch with what they are wanting or needing out of life. Colene understood this as a result of trying to calm the waters at home as a young child.
It'd be on me to just make sure everything was just staying together. And so I wouldn't be able to really open up my emotions with that. But that felt for me like, oh, I'm helping though by doing that because they're not having to deal with me at this time, or like with my emotions, my feelings. And as long as like I'm not being a bother, then I'm being helpful. Throughout the years, I will say, like, I think it's gotten better with me being more open about the things that I might be needing at the time. But it took me a while to be able to fully state those because I didn't want to rock the boat because, I kind of like made myself think I'm fine. Like, it's okay. I don't need these things because I've survived this far. So, as long as like everyone else is doing good, then I'm doing good because they're doing all right.
And here's how B describes her experience.
I think another fear that I think is not very talked about is a kind of fear or an anxiety related to a kind of insubstantiality. And I think with twos, what that means is like I when I first got into therapy, I realized I didn't feel like I had a sense of self because my energy and attention was so much going outside me to other people all the time that, I sometimes tell the story, like one of my first experiences of any kind in sort of a self-development context was being in a women's group. And one week, the leader, the therapist who was leading it turned to me and said, "What do you need from the group this week?" It was as if I looked inside and there was nothing there. There was no answer. There was no information. It was sort of like this feeling of existential anxiety, like there's no there.
It can be hard for a two to not only say what they want, but to know what they want. But they can learn how to value themselves and others in a way that honors both people. Listen to Colene share about her growth and serving.
I will get texts. I will get things all the time like, "Hey, are you available? Can you help with this? Can you help with this?" And as much as my initial reaction is yes, I just have to hit pause and think through it and be like, okay, is this really what I need to be doing? Like, I know I'm not the only person. Like, there are others, and I don't have to always be the one to fulfill this responsibility. Like, I can, and it's okay for me to say no and just to not work or to just attend and to be okay with just being a part of the event or whatever is happening. And I don't have to feel like I have to do something with it. I can just enjoy.
Part of the journey of the self-preservation too is realizing that they aren't a kid anymore. They're a grown-up. Listen to how this translated into Colene's ability to break the expectations of her role in her family.
Talk about like with my dad and stuff, like there's some manipulation that was sometimes going on. And that I just didn't appreciate because if I said no to something, there would sometimes be I'm going to make you feel bad for not wanting to do those things. And I actually took the initiative and I had a conversation with him and like saying, I don't appreciate that. Like it should be okay for me to be able to say no. It's not in any reflection about you. It's just like at that time, it's not good for me. And, just know that I still love you. But it's okay for me to have said that. And what's starting to have more of those open conversations has actually led to us getting along even better, which has really deepened our relationship.
I'd like to end with this story from Kim, lest we forget the power of empathy and caring for others.
So as a nurse, obviously that fits well into my Enneagram type, that I do see a lot of people in life where they're really struggling, and always emotionally, physically, but spiritually. And so one of the things that is powerful, I think, about my type, being able to be expressive with my emotions and empathetic, is being able to really be there with them. As much as, the two can be known as doing, serving, and helping, I think one of the more powerful things and the gifts that I do feel like is brought out in the two is that I can be very empathetic and sit with people in whatever they're feeling. And so that, I think, is, again, one of those superpowers where I realize, the more I get to know the Enneagram, that's not something that everybody can do or do very easily. I question a lot of times, is this the right life path as a nurse to go down? But I'm oftentimes affirmed that the most powerful thing a nurse can do, or a mom can do, or sometimes a human can do, is just sit with somebody in their pain, or sit with somebody and really empathize and just be able to be and to carry those emotions, if even just for a little while.
I imagine if you're like me and you found yourself in a time of need, you'll never forget those who could be present with you, those who could understand and empathize, even for a little while. That's it for this episode of the Story Enneagram podcast. Thanks for listening. And if you or someone you know is a 2 who needs to know that their needs are as important as others, you've come to the right place. Wouldn't it be great to experience the natural giving and receiving in your everyday relationships? Visit my website at storyenneagram.com. I offer Enneagram team building experiences and training for businesses, schools, and nonprofits. I also offer personal coaching packages for individuals or couples. Drop me a line and let's explore what the Enneagram can do for you. Please subscribe to the Story Enneagram podcast. Share it with your friends and family. And if you're really feeling it, leave a rating in Apple Podcasts. I'd appreciate it. Our music is by Daniel Gum. You can hear his music on Spotify or wherever you get your music. And yes, we do have the same last name. Story Enneagram, where learning your type is just the beginning of a whole new story.